Althea Morven sat in her study, a quiet storm brewing behind her composed expression. The grand windows of her Edinburgh townhouse cast the dimming light of early autumn across her polished oak desk, where she held a folder in her hands. The folder contained the evidence: texts, photos, bank records, everything she needed to confirm what had only been suspicions weeks before. Her husband, Isadore Verne, was having an affair, and not with just anyone, with Seren. Seren Morven, her younger sister, had always been a force of chaos. Where Althea was structured, disciplined, and always in control, Seren was wild, impulsive, and always seeking freedom in the worst ways. Althea had welcomed Seren back into her life, offering her a place to stay after years of estrangement. And this was how she had been repaid. The affair hadn't just begun with Seren's return to Edinburgh. It had rekindled something Althea had suspected might have started years ago. But now Seren had come back, not only to reignite an old flame, but to dismantle everything Althea had worked for. She knew it now. It was no coincidence that Isadore had grown distant at the exact moment Seren reappeared in their lives. The Morven family was hosting their annual reunion in just a few days at Althea's ancestral estate in the Highlands. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Isadore was oblivious, and Seren had no idea Althea had been silently gathering the pieces, waiting for the right moment to expose them. For the first time in weeks, a small, cold smile crept across Althea's lips. Her revenge would be precise, public, and devastating. The day of the Morven family reunion arrived with a brilliant autumn sun that belied the storm about to break. The estate in the Highlands, sprawling and secluded, was the perfect setting for a seemingly joyous family event. Guests arrived from all over, extended family, close friends, and business associates, each unaware of the tension brewing just beneath the surface. The estate had been in the Morven family for generations, its stone halls filled with memories of long-forgotten gatherings, laughter, and now hidden resentments. Althea moved through the crowd with grace, exchanging pleasantries, but her eyes were always on Isadore and Seren. They had arrived separately, trying to maintain some semblance of discretion. But Althea noticed the way Isadore's gaze lingered on Seren as she glided into the room, dressed in a flowing burgundy gown. Seren had always known how to command attention, her beauty alluring. But there was something more calculating about her now, something colder. Althea's jaw tightened as she watched them. Isadore approached her with a glass of wine, his smile practiced and charming. "You look stunning, as always," he said, kissing her cheek. She returned the gesture, her eyes cool. "Thank you, darling. It's such a perfect evening for a celebration, isn't it?" Her words were laced with double meaning, but Isadore didn't seem to notice. He was too wrapped up in maintaining appearances, too sure that his secrets were safe. Althea played her role well, smiling and engaging in conversation, but beneath the surface her mind was racing. The evidence was ready, and soon, so would be the revelation. As the evening progressed, the air inside the estate grew thick with the warmth of wine and laughter. Long tables were set up in the grand dining hall, the space illuminated by chandeliers that cast soft golden light over the guests. Althea sat at the head of the table, Isadore at her side, while Seren, ever the guest of honor in her own mind, sat across from them, her eyes flicking occasionally to Isadore. Conversation flowed easily around them, but Althea barely registered the words. Her thoughts were consumed with the moment ahead. Soon it would all unravel. She caught Seren's eye from across the table, and for a brief moment something passed between them. Seren's expression, always so confident, faltered. Did she suspect something? Did she know what was coming? Althea's heart raced, but she remained calm. She reached into her lap, feeling the edge of the folder hidden beneath the tablecloth. Isadore placed a hand on her arm, leaning in to whisper, "You seem distracted, love." Althea forced a smile. "Just thinking about how lucky I am," she replied, her voice smooth as silk. "To have such a wonderful family." Isadore's eyes glinted with amusement, oblivious to the storm brewing just inches away. As dinner began to wind down, the mood in the room changed. Guests grew quieter, the effects of too much wine setting in, and the soft murmur of conversation became a low hum. The time was coming. Althea rose slowly from her chair, her movements deliberate. All eyes turned to her, expecting a warm toast, a speech about family and love, the same as she had done every year. But this year was different. She smiled, but there was something icy in her expression. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. It's truly a blessing to have all of you in our lives. Family means everything to me." Her gaze shifted to Seren, whose confidence seemed to waver. Althea's hand slipped under the table, retrieving the folder. But sometimes the ones we trust the most can be the ones who betray us the worst. The air in the room grew heavy. Isadore straightened in his chair, his smile faltering. Seren froze, her eyes wide with anticipation, fear flickering in the depths of her gaze. Althea opened the folder, her movements slow and purposeful. "There are some things that can no longer be hidden," she said softly, her voice carrying through the silence like the crack of a whip. She pulled out the first photograph, one of Seren and Isadore together at a cafe, their heads close, laughing. She dropped it on the table for everyone to see. A gasp escaped from one of the guests. Isadore's face drained of color, and Seren sat rigid, her breath shallow. What are you doing?" Isadore stammered, trying to maintain control, but his voice wavered. Althea's smile didn't falter. She laid down more evidence. Text messages, receipts, photos, one by one, the weight of betrayal growing heavier with each reveal. "I've known for a while now," she said, her voice steady, "but I wanted to wait until the right moment to show everyone the truth." The room was silent, stunned into disbelief. Isadore tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Seren's hands trembled as she stared down at the damning evidence spread across the table. "I trusted both of you," Althea said, her voice shaking with the intensity of her emotions. "I loved both of you. And this is how you repay me?" The silence was deafening. Seren finally spoke, her voice weak. "Althea, I can explain." But Althea held up a hand, silencing her. "Number, you've already said enough." Isadore rose from his chair, stumbling over his words. "Please, Althea, we can fix this. It doesn't have to end this way." But Althea shook her head. Her eyes were cold, her resolve unbreakable. "It's already ended." As the guests sat in stunned silence, the weight of Althea's revelation settled like a dark cloud over the room. The air was thick with tension, the kind that could snap at any moment. And when it did, the aftermath would be catastrophic. The evidence lay scattered across the long oak table like broken glass, each photograph and document cutting deeper into the facade of their perfect lives. Isadore stood, his face pale, sweat glistening on his brow. He stammered, "Althea, please. This is a misunderstanding. We can—" "Enough!" Althea's voice was sharp, slicing through the tension like a blade. Her control, once so meticulously crafted, was unraveling before everyone's eyes. "You betrayed me, Isadore. You both did. And now you want to twist this into something you can fix." Seren, who had remained seated, her hands trembling, finally stood. She was no longer the bold, confident sister she had been moments earlier. "Althea, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Please believe me." Althea's eyes locked onto Seren's, cold and unwavering. "Didn't mean for it to happen? You've been planning this for months, haven't you?" There was no response, only the sound of Seren's shallow breathing as she struggled to find words that could somehow absolve her of the guilt. But there were no words, no excuses. Seren had woven this web of lies, thinking she could outplay her older sister, but she hadn't realized that Althea had been watching from the start. Isadore's voice cracked as he took a step closer. "We can explain. It was a mistake, but I still love you, Althea. We can work this out." Althea's laugh was low, humorless. "Love?" she spat. "You don't know the meaning of the word. You and Seren. This wasn't just an affair, was it? You were planning to destroy me. You were going to frame me for crimes I didn't commit, ruin my career, and walk away with everything." A collective gasp rippled through the room. The guests, who had been silent spectators to this unraveling drama, now exchanged nervous glances. The situation was spiraling far beyond what anyone had imagined. Isadore's face contorted with a mixture of fear and confusion. No, that's not true. I never—" "Lies." Althea's voice was cold, detached, as if she were stating simple facts. "Do you think I didn't know? Do you think I haven't been watching you? Everything you've done, everything you planned, I know." Serene's eyes flickered with something new. Panic. She stepped forward, placing herself between Althea and Isadore. "Althea, we made mistakes. I never wanted to hurt you like this. But you've always had everything. Your perfect life, your perfect career. I just wanted a piece of it." Althea's expression remained unreadable. "And what did you think you'd gain from this? From sleeping with my husband and plotting against me? Did you really believe you could take it all from me?" Serene's voice was a whisper now, barely audible. I don't know." The silence that followed was unbearable. The tension in the room was palpable, a heavy, oppressive force that pressed down on everyone. Suddenly, Althea moved. In a swift motion, she reached for the ceremonial Highland dirk, a dagger that had hung on the wall as a decoration for years. She gripped it tightly, her knuckles turning white. "Althea, no!" Isadore's voice was filled with panic as he lunged forward, trying to stop her. But he was too slow. Althea's eyes were locked on Seren, cold and emotionless. "You took everything from me. My trust, my life, my dignity. And now you'll pay for it." Seren's face paled as she realized what was about to happen. "Althea, wait, please." But the words were cut off as Althea drove the dirk into her sister's abdomen with brutal force. Blood splattered across the table, the dark red staining the fine linen and the photographs that had exposed their lies. Seren gasped, her body convulsing in shock and pain as she crumpled to the ground. The room erupted into chaos. Guests screamed, some rushing forward, others backing away in horror. Isadore stumbled towards Seren's lifeless body, his hands shaking as he reached out, too late to save her. The once beautiful estate dining hall was now a scene of horror. Althea stood frozen, the dirk still in her hand, blood dripping from the blade. Her face was pale but eerily calm, as though all the emotion she had suppressed for months had now finally been released. She looked down at Serene's body, her lips barely moving as she whispered, "It's over." The aftermath was swift and brutal. The police arrived within minutes, responding to the panicked calls from the guests who had fled the scene. Althea didn't resist as they led her away, still holding the blood-stained dirk. She barely registered their voices, their questions, their demands. Her mind was elsewhere, numb, detached, as if watching the events unfold from a distance. Isadore, meanwhile, was inconsolable. He cradled Serene's body in his arms, her blood staining his clothes. His face was a mask of despair, guilt, and fear. The life he had known was over. Everything he had schemed for, everything he had plotted with Seren, had collapsed in a single horrific moment. As Althea sat in the back of the police car, her eyes blank and unseeing, memories flickered through her mind. It wasn't just the affair that had destroyed her. It was everything leading up to it. The years of subtle manipulations, the gaslighting, the moments when Isadore had made her question her own sanity. And Seren had always been there, lurking in the shadows, feeding into Althea's doubts, making her believe she was the problem. This wasn't just a crime of passion, it was something much darker. Althea had known about the affair long before she acted, long before she gathered the evidence. In some part of her mind, she had always known, but she had waited patiently for the perfect moment to destroy them both. The dirk hadn't just been a weapon of opportunity, it had been chosen, symbolic, deliberate. Althea had planned for this moment, though even she hadn't fully realized it until the blood had been spilled. In the days that followed, the scandal rocked Edinburgh's high society. The Morven family's name was dragged through the mud, their once glamorous lives now a tragic tale of betrayal, murder, and downfall. Isadore, left with nothing, disappeared from public view, his life shattered. The investigation into his and Seren's financial schemes continued, revealing just how deep their treachery had gone. As for Althea, she remained eerily calm throughout her trial. The media painted her as a scorned wife, driven mad by betrayal. But there were whispers that Althea had been far more calculating than anyone had realized. In the end, Althea Morven had destroyed them all, and she had done it on her own terms.